life in a rural setting in the small African country of Malawi. Less than a third the size of Texas, but about the same number of bird species. He wandered around daily on 90 acres of land that had quite a bit of native habitat still intact, and thus a wonderful diversity of birds. There, by the time he started high school, he began making changes to his family's yard to attract more birds. Almost 50 years later, he found himself working with birds and all the other wild things in another landscape, about 90 acres of Texas. The Eden Center for Regenerative Culture, just about 22 miles southeast of Abilene. And on his little fraction of an acre block here in town, he has been doing his best for 15 years to make his yard a place where native bird species want to hang out. He is an enthusiastic master naturalist and is a big fan of the partnership between master naturalists and master gardeners here in Taylor County. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ian Shelburne.
Okay, I don't know if this is picking up or not, but you can sound okay. All right. I think that's good with the volume. Well, the good news is that you got saved from having to be called up and sit up here on the mourner's bench and close by, because I have usually in my substitute teaching career, which has been haphazardly through the years, I figured out pretty quickly that I was not going to take any more coaching jobs because I didn't have the coach voice that you have to have, you know, the whole day in high volume. And I would be alongside those coaches and them doing that, and I said, I can't do this, so I can stick with the history and English and stuff like that in the classroom. So anyway, we were thinking, okay, we're going to have to get everybody to sit right up here in the first 4 or 5 rows so y'all can hear me, but you're safe. You can have a little space. That's good. All right, so really excited about being here and sharing stuff that I'm interested in, have been all my life. Birds were the first thing that really grabbed my interest about the natural world. Of course, being a master naturalist means that I've been able to try to learn about a bunch of other things as well, which is really, really great. The birds were my first love and continue to be my first love. And so wherever I've lived, I've always wanted to just pay attention to the birds that are there and then not be satisfied with the birds that are there. Well, what can we do to get some other ones to come in here and join us? So that's a large part of what this is about today. So this is the first bird field guide. I started being interested in birds and had no idea there were books that had pictures and information and actual names of these birds. When I discovered that, and I still have that copy, copyright 1963, kind of old school in a lot of ways, but it was gold. I mean, next to my Bible, which I, was raised to prize above all books, this was my favorite book. Absolutely. You can see, every time I actually find a species, I would note it. That was my somewhat disorganized attempt at a list. I know we got eBird these days, but I just kind of notated in my field guide whenever I see something, and sometimes in the text I put the date and where it was. And so I'm terrible at keeping lists, but I love going back to some of those old field guides, and I can remember what I saw and when it was, perhaps. So so it may be a rhetorical question, but it's a good question, and that's what we're going to talk about some today, is why would you want birds in your yard? I mean, they poop and they make a mess at times. There are certain kinds especially that roost together communally, and you don't park under those places and stuff. But I think this little Inca dove is a great example of why you might want birds in your yard. Just a couple of months ago, this Inca dove showed up, and I'd never seen one do this. It would land there and it would just raise one wing up there, kind of like getting some rays, And well, that is amazing, because that is their feature. I mean, they're beautiful in general, but that russet wing, oh my goodness! Usually just see flashes of it when they fly, right? But it was just there for it. I think your picture, this is great. So that was really fun. So yeah, that's the argument for why you want birds in your yard, right? Because they're amazing. You're always, even if you have 3 lifetimes, you're going to learn more about birds if you pay attention. You're going to see new ones. You're going to learn more about the ones you're familiar with already, like this little Inca dove. So there's lots of good reasons. So my approach as far as talking about birds in yards today is going to be focused on the importance of really a systemic sort of approach and being aware of the ecosystems that our yards are part of. because we don't have control over that much over what happens outside our yard. We have a lot of control about what happens inside our yards. And if we just sort of think about one factor, okay, I'm really interested in the flowers, or I'm really interested in this, that, or the other, we can make some progress, but honestly, the people who study biology a lot say nature is composed of ecosystems where every member interacts with the other members. And if we aren't aware of all those different factors and players in the game, we're going to really get frustrated when we're trying to achieve certain outcomes. And sometimes if we narrow-mindedly pursue a certain agenda in our yards, we might get some success there, but we might be doing lots of damage to other parts of the ecosystems. And one of the basic rules that makes a lot of sense to me is that when all the members of an ecosystem are healthy, then the ecosystem's healthy. And when it's all healthy, then individual members are usually thriving. But if you decide, I don't like these three parts of the ecosystem, I'm going to blast them out of existence, then you find out the whole thing gets shaky. And it's really hard. You kind of have an artificial environment going on, and you can kind of prop that up, but it's not really nature at its best. And so I'm going to make a plea for trying to think in terms of a whole and how we can deal with that. That means there will be some of the things you don't like as much that you might just try to control more, you know. And there are ways to eliminate some things. Like my personal thing is like things like chaffweed and sandburrs. I want to be able to walk in my yard even barefoot without getting, tortured and hurt really badly. And so I will usually mechanically work on controlling those, and that's a slower way to do it. But you know what? It lasts a little longer too. If you just top kill them, it's amazing how they tend to come back and all that. So anyway, the approach that really emphasizes the benefit of biodiversity. So you have a variegated, flourishing community of plants, animals, fungi, microbes, and I'm sure we could add to the list. But when all those things are present and in some kind of a balance, there's usually some flourishing and some health that's going on. And the system it's not just in equilibrium. Over time, it can get better. And we can encourage that, and we can, really it's fun to see what happens even in a yardscape. Over years, when you just apply the kind of measures we're going to be talking about here, it changes. I mean, the diversity you have changes. And it is so exciting and thrilling to see that happen there. So whether it's the prairie gentians there, and I don't have those in my yard. Those are from out and about, probably Kirby Lake or somewhere. But we do have Carolina chickadees, and you don't find those in all that many yards. So we're blessed to be reasonably close to some woodland, but to have those in our yard means we've got to do some things in our yard to make them want to come. All right, so, we're used to this conventional kind of a landscape when it comes to yards. Conventional lawn-based yards does hardly have any of the things that we might want to have in terms of biodiversity, in terms of especially certain, kinds of birds that might not normally be in a yard. It looks neat, looks pretty, well kept. People think you're a good outstanding citizen probably when it looks like that, but it takes a lot of work to maintain that. And when you have a lot of, especially if you have a real monoculture type yard, it's all fescue or it's all, St. Augustine or whatever, it's very vulnerable. It's actually a fragile system. It depends on you. Making sure you're putting the right kind of inputs in there and killing off the wrong things and all, and you can maintain that pristine look, but you're doing a lot of work and spending a lot of money. And you're not getting a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today when you limit yourself to that kind of a viewpoint. So, a couple of things. If you don't want to have quite as much maintenance, there's some things you can do instead of just that traditional lawn. Man, there's a lot of great alternatives and options out there. You can do some more, shrubby type things, replace with some native ground covers and things that actually do some flowering as well, instead of being plain green or whatever. That's actually a young vitex there, so that's technically not a native plant, but it is kind of naturalized and works pretty well in the landscape around here. And you got the rosemary there, and then you got leaf litter and all. And that's I don't have to mow that. And really, I don't have to do a lot of water. Most of those particular plants there, the summer like we just got through having, or you might do some supplemental, but you're not pouring water on them every day. They just don't need that kind of stuff. So multi-purpose perennials are a good fit. This is someone's yard that I really enjoy quite a bit. It's over in Green Valley, and I think that person might be a master gardener. Anyway, just, you can get some things that look really, really nice and provide some really good habitat for birds and other creatures as well. Here's just an example. You're probably familiar, I know master gardeners are, with forest herb or strangler daisy. It's a good land cover, or ground cover. It does take a little while to get started in the spring, so it'll lie back, but it's a perennial. And it has the benefit of actually making flowers. They're tiny, but it's amazing how many pollinators love sphagnum daisy flowers. And it doesn't usually have to be mowed. That's about as tall as I've ever seen it get. You know, maybe 6 or 7, 8 inches maximum if there's a lot of water going on or whatever, but it grows pretty well in shade. That particular lane there is well shaded most of the day. It's just brother, just having fun. So I recommend people think about that kind of thing. I definitely could put grass in there and mow it, but why? I've got something that to me is prettier, and it's doing some ecosystem services, and it's just beautiful. Good stuff there. Another great one is frog fruit, and again, these are tiny, tiny little flowers, but if you've ever been around a bunch of frog fruit and look at how many pollinators are there, it'll blow your mind. It's just amazing. And it's pretty hardy. I mean, it can be almost too hardy. Sometimes it gets into places you don't want it to, but it's a really good kind of a native ground cover as well. So, all right, but if we're thinking about focusing on attracting birds to our yards, and I'm really indebted to Professor Doug Tallamy. Some of you have read Nature's Best Hope probably, or maybe seen some things. If you Google his name, you're going to get lots of TED Talks. No, so you might have done a couple, but a lot of different video talks he's done. He has this amazing scheme, which I love because of just the concept. It's so creative, of the homegrown national park. You know, he points out that people say, oh, if we just set aside some more land, you know, for more national parks and conserve our natural environment, and we'd have, you know, preserve some of the biodiversity. He says, the fact is, we've pretty much turned all of it that we can. And there may be a couple of little things. We can't do much more with national parks. We've kind of exhausted that. So he said, why don't we reinvent the whole idea and just people, you know, family by family, yard by yard, say, well, let's do a little bit more to make this a kind of a native landscape that's in keeping or in harmony with what normally grows in this area anyway, and let wildlife and let nature do its thing so that we have all these little places. And he's got this website where you can actually register that if you're trying to, you know, kind of major on native plants and all that, you can become kind of part of this homegrown national park thing. Anyway, if you want to attract birds, one of the points he makes, start by thinking about their needs like they think about their needs. They don't just think about, you know, my need is to be beautiful so these people can see me, but their needs are, you know, for their reproductive cycles and their food and things like that. So what do we need to do for that? Well, the short answer is insects. And that may give you may feel a little creepy about bugs and things like that, but that's life for birds. And for many different reasons, for food and for other things as well that we can talk about. So we've got a couple of predatory things there. A leptoglossus bug there that will eat other insects. So having those kind of things, it's kind of an ugly old beetle, but it will help control pests, the kinds of insects that make your garden and things like that. The dragonfly will also eat mosquitoes and things like that you might not want to have around. Think about the skippers and things like that that will just be attractive as well, and then they will lay lots of eggs and produce lots of larvae that the birds will then depend on. They can't do without that. So here's an insight. This comes from Doug Tallamy and other researchers. Over 90% of land birds need insects, both larval and adult forms, as food, particularly for their nestlings. See, I've known ever since I started looking at birds in Africa that there's some birds that eat insects. They eat bugs all the time, you know, and small creatures, and they're carnivorous. And there are other birds, like the doves and finches and whatnot, that eat seeds. There's the seed eaters and the herbivores, and then there's the carnivores. I don't know why it did not click in my brain until I started reading some of this research. Their nestlings require, even the seed-eating birds, their nestlings require a diet high in fat and protein in order to maintain proper growth pace. They cannot survive on seeds until they get closer to maturity. And they start learning how to eat seeds. But that's an acquired taste, and that will become what they survive on largely. But even seed-eating birds and doves and things like that will occasionally get some additional protein supplements by eating some insects or some larvae. If you ever see a flight of flying ants, you know, the reproducing versions of ants and termites, they'll fly up there to find mates and make new colonies. Almost every kind of bird that I've ever seen will eat those, even if they're seed eaters. They'll eat those guys because that's just free protein and fat going on there. So now, if you want to have insects, they depend mainly on the native plants with which they've co-evolved and adapted, and there are those relationships that have lasted a long, long time. They're used to each other, they know each other, they know how to eat those things. A little side note there, plants, because they don't want to be eaten, have defense mechanisms. just like some bugs and critters do. Have you ever wondered why your average baby doesn't just naturally love all vegetables? It isn't because they have some perverse streak in their nature. It's because vegetables have not really thrived by being good to eat. There's more of them that survive when they're not good to eat. And so they tend to be strong tasting or bitter or things like that to defend themselves, right? Or sometimes toxic to defend themselves, right? So you have, the example we all know about is how monarch butterflies and others in their family will use milkweed in that family of plants, which are toxic to most other insects. And so the monarchs have managed to develop a resistance to an extent. They take only a measured dose of that sap as larvae, but they managed to work their little niche, how they can thrive there. But not many other things besides milkweed bugs and a few others thrive on milkweed. So this is why exotic plants, as wonderful as they might be, our crepe myrtles and different things that we like a lot in our landscaping, tend to not support a large bird population. They can look great in your landscape, and there's so much beauty there, but it can be fairly sterile when it comes to birds. And it's very, very simple. The birds need insects, and the insects have to have plants that they're used to, that they know how to get food from, know how to thrive with. And so again, now we're talking about an ecosystem here. We're talking about food chains and food webs, like you learned in 4th or 5th grade. I don't know, but those are factors that play big in terms of the kinds of birds we have in our yards, because they got to survive. And especially when it comes to feeding their babies, they can't nest in or near your yard unless they have a lot of insect larvae, especially caterpillars. And moths are the biggest providers. I mean, butterflies too, but moths, they really do. They're more numerous in terms of species anyway. Individuals in butterflies are, but they're not as showy for most of them. But anyway, here we've got you probably recognize the Befriending butterfly over here. Oops, go back. And then the larvae of that same one, you can see that palmate leaf there. That's one of your passion plants, and I'm sure some of you have those in your yard. I don't yet. That's on my list to get some of those growing. And you've got the black swallowtail butterfly with the rue plant with the caterpillar on that. So those need to be happening in our yards, and many others besides, in order for us to have it thriving.
What was that palmate plant that you wanted?
Okay, so this is a passion vine, and what's there's a name for it here in the States that I'm not.
Passiflora or something?
Passiflora, yeah, and there's a common name, maypop.
Oh.
Maypop is what some people call them as well. Yeah, and so it's a worldwide species in the tropics. In southern U.S. we have the maypops and some others, but the Gulf fritillary uses that as its larval host. It's a great thing, and they're not that common here now. I see them in some yards, but I want to put some in mine because I love the plant. I grew up eating the fruit of the species that we had in Africa. They're just amazing.
I've noticed that by the acre in East Texas.
Oh, that's so much there. Yeah, I think in the eastern part of the eastern U.S. there's a lot more of it. Yeah, for sure.
Ian,
Yes.
I don't know if we can ask sidebar questions, but
Sure.
so I actually have some passion vine growing very well in my backyard, but I also have bird feeders. I am inadvertently feeding my birds my little caterpillars. It's making me very sad. So do you have any kind of suggestion on having a good balance? I want to protect them so that they can.
Sometimes you just have to let some of that kind of transaction happen. I mean, you can observe it for a while and kind of look at patterns and see what you can do, but there's always going to be some give and take for sure on that kind of thing.
That was a political.
All right, so Doug Talamy suggests, he's not a purist. He doesn't want to go around and burn all the exotic plants out of our yards and all that. He just says if we can kind of shoot for, around 70%, or maybe 3/4-ish of native plants in our yards, and then we can have our favorite, beautiful. I admit I love the full blooming crepe myrtle. It's gorgeous, even if it doesn't have a lot of critters involved with it. But there's room to don't have to be an ideologue and pushing some agenda on this kind of thing. But the native trees and woody shrubs especially are important in supporting insect life, to maintain that insect variety in the population. So the concept of a keystone species is not new to anyone. I know that. We learned about those in school. And basically, it's just a species or a member of an ecosystem that has more connections to the rest of the ecosystem. There are a lot of species or elements that might have just one or two connections systems need that. But certain ones, if you get rid of that, the whole thing starts wilting. And so there are keystone plant species that, for whatever reason, support an inordinately large variety of insect species, either for the habitat they provide, or the food it provides, or some other ecosystem service like that, like larval hosts for moths and butterflies. And so it's good to know which are the keystone species in your area. So there's this is a link, and I'm sure we're providing the slides, right?
Yes.
So if you click on that, it's basically across North America. It gives you the different really big ecozones. I mean, it doesn't get really very specific, but you can click on the Great Plains one, for example, and you'll find a pretty good list of many keystone species that would be operative in our area. And so you might just kind of look through that and say, do I have some of those around? But generally speaking, among the trees, oak trees are the champions as far as the numbers of species they support. Again, by habitat, by providing food or whatever. So growing an oak, but try to make it a native oak. You can grow a beautiful oak that doesn't normally grow in your area, and there might not be as much of a match. But some of the oaks can support 400 plus species of insects in different ways. So it's awesomely amazing. Whereas if you have some kind of exotic tree growing, I've got a quite lovely Chinese pistache tree that is growing in my front yard, and it's big enough now that I'm not going to get rid of it. But I didn't know when I put it there that I could have made a better choice possibly, but it does provide some services. It's not like it doesn't. I mean, there's definitely some habitat availability there to provide some of that, and quite a few birds do eat the berries on it. I don't know much about their nutritional value, but even the mockingbirds, which generally eat bugs, will hang out in there and they'll eat those berries. I've been watching to see. So it's not just a loss, but on the other side of it, this is a picture of a couple years old. It's about 3 times that size now, but that's a Shumard red oak. And it's native, not so much to West Texas, but it definitely is native to East Texas and running up north of here. But it's a great species to have around supporting your insect population. So Cenizo, it's just a good shrub. And as you all know, whenever it gets a little bit wet, it gets rain, man, it just shows up. And it's really good for pollinators and habitat and things, and there's so many others like that. So native plants that support insects and thereby birds. Just put a few here, and most of these are what I've taken pictures of in our yard. Hackberry tree species are loved to be hated by most people. The phrase trash tree, I've heard by so many people, and you know what? They've got some annoying habits, don't they? I mean, if you put a fence in, it's not going to be long before a hackberry wants to grow up there and just kind of devour that fence. It's just, they can really get in your way, right? And so, and they don't always have a long life, and they have somewhat brittle limbs, will fall down on things and stuff like that. But insects love them, and so do birds. A wide variety. They're great species to have around. So I actually transplanted that one myself. Not that there aren't a lot of volunteer hackberries around, but this one was volunteering in the woodland nearby, and I planted it, and it has grown pretty fast, and it's I don't think it's an ugly tree, and it's doing pretty well there. I went to some webinar, or attended some webinar, and someone was harping on the medicinal benefits for people from hackberries as well. I mean, I do. For years, I've eaten the berries. They're a little bit hard. Man, they're tasty. I'm going to get me a commercial press or mill at some point, because I think that if you just crush those whole things, you'd have kind of a paste that would, oh man, be to die for. It'd be great. Anyway, so that's of course hackberry emperors and Montani emperors. We see a lot, and there are many other insects that depend on hackberries. A little bit south of here, Empress Laelia butterflies will also be a host of this particular tree. So, oh yeah, and their berries are very important to the birds. Even if you don't like the berries like I do, the cedar waxwings and so many birds in the winter when they can't get a lot of green living things, they stick around the hackberries and other trees that have berries in the wintertime. Sorrel vine, so this is a member of the grape family, Cissus. It's found anywhere you walk around in Abilene, you're going to see some growing up in a mesquite tree or something like that. It's not edible for humans as far as I know, but it's an attractive vine, little bit fleshy leaves, and it does host at least 4 moth species, and it provides habitat for many other critters. The fact that you have that growing up on a trunk means there's a lot of cover for anything from insects to reptiles to whatever. So it really does deliver some good services, and it grows readily. So I've actually encouraged sorrel vine to grow in our yard, just to have some cover on some of the other trees that are there. And these pictures are out of our yard. I'm really happy about this little Taleote here. It's a Sinenchum, one of the milk vines. And there are, here and there in Abilene, you can find them in alleys and things like that once in a while. Yes, I'm an inveterate alley walker because I like to find plants that way and volunteering. But it's similar to the climbing milkweed vine that we see a lot in Abilene, but you don't see this one near as often. But I've got 3 young ones growing up in my yard because I want to provide services to monarchs and to both for larval hosts and also for the blooms and things. So that's pretty cool. I found in Cook County some seeds from one of these guys and planted them, and so a few of them came up. Really pretty excited about that. So monarch and soldier butterflies and nectar as well there. All right, the wheel bug. Now if that doesn't look like some kind of a dinosaur, then I don't know what does. And most people see a bug that looks like that and says, well, we have got to kill that thing. It's bound to be a bad bug. Well, it's bad for the things that are eating your lettuce, and killing your tomatoes. Because this was the only one I had this year, and I got a picture of it that I was a couple years ago, I guess. I was wishing I had about 20 or 30 of them because I had different things attacking my vegetables. So if I had more of these guys, they would be taking care of business, and that would be great.
Ian,
Ian.
question?
Yes.
They work good on squash bugs.
Oh, and you know what? How else do you get rid of squash bugs? I know you can grab them and crush them, but yeah, have something to eat them.
Yeah.
Would be great. Yeah, squash bugs are one of the worst things. A lot of times my experience is you can have a year or so, a season of squash where you do okay and maybe a couple of them, but the next year, boy, you're done. They're just there. They've marked the territory. They know where it is. So yeah, wheel bugs are great for those, even those big beetles like that. Southern yellow jacket, well, I say predatory wasps. All wasps are, as far as I know, most wasps are somewhat predatory. But besides being terrible when they sting you, they're also really good at killing nefarious insects and things like that. And they're providing ecosystem services. Kingbirds, for example, love to snack on a wasp, and so do dragonflies, all kinds of. They don't worry about them. They can outmaneuver these guys, and robber flies, they don't hesitate. They first wasp they see, they're gonna eat that thing, and they can outdo the wasps every time. Well, here's I'm getting ahead of myself here. So here's variegated meadowhawk we're not seeing yet. They'll come on in the next month or two, and then they're the longest persisting dragonfly species that I know of in our area. You'll see them in yards even up in November, and the rest of them have kind of had their day and gone on. And then the robber flies, I don't know much about their season, but this one was in my yard and had its lunch with it already. I don't know of a more intrepid insect predator, except maybe a praying mantis, but these are in the upper echelons. They can really take care of things. So and the bigger critters will eat them too. So it's all the change. So the more of these kind of guys you can have around, your yard is way more interesting, as well as also providing services which translate into more and more numbers of birds and diversity of birds. So a lot of people don't want to have any leaves lying around, and I understand that, as far as neatness and all that. But there are a lot of insect species, and especially moths, who depend on leaf litter for part of their life cycle. They'll feed as a larva, and then they'll make their pupa, and they will oftentimes make it through the cold season in leaf litter. And so I've made it a practice for years, whenever my neighbors are raking their leaves or bagging up, things like that, saying, if you don't feel like you have to take that off and dump it in the landfill or something like that, could I have it? And I don't have the time to go and rake for them, although if I did, I wouldn't mind doing that because I don't feel like I have enough leaves. And so I try to get leaf litter from my friends and neighbors, and if I see some bagged up in the alley, if I've got time, I will take my truck over there and I'll get it. And try to pay attention to what's there. It could be bad stuff. But a lot of times I have really benefited. My backyard soil is a different level of health than it was years and years ago, because I have done that pretty consistently, and boy, you get many more insects being nurtured and their lives supported that way. So pretty much the rule, and I'm a permaculture guy as well, and so one of the rules that we go by is that you don't want to have bare ground. If there's bare ground, there better be a really important reason for it. Otherwise, we want to have something covering it, partly because the soil is going to be healthier instead of being baked, and then you also have lots and lots of things living there, as well as the soil just gradually growing in its health overall. So yeah, it's a good practice. So, all right, so I think most of us either have used bird feeders and bird baths, or thought about it, or wondered about it, or whatever. I've had every kind of failure and success you can imagine with myself. When I lived in Uganda for 13 years, I was all excited. I'd give myself a bird bath because Uganda's birds are unbelievable. It's such an amazing place. And so I got myself, this elaborate setup with the bird bath and the little feeder area and all that. And I thought, yeah, now I'm really going to see the birds. I don't think I ever saw even one bird over the years that thing sat there, come to that water or get the food off it. What's wrong here? And I finally just like, there was a really rich sources of water everywhere in the place that we lived there in Uganda. I mean, no one had to come and get my artificial setup to access their water or their food. They had way better luck on their food getting it from somewhere else. And so I wasted a lot of effort on that. So it does behoove us to pay attention to our conditions. Are your conditions such, and they happen to be pretty good for bird baths in West Texas, because you know what? Give it a few days and all the water everywhere dries up, right? Except for what's getting replenished. So really it's a great setup here for things like bird baths, and even in some ways feeders, because there are times when there's a dearth of good things for birds to eat. But there's some things to do and some things not to do, even here. So artificial feeders are fine as supplements, but I think supplements is their role. I think it's pretty important not to think that is the main thing or the only thing that birds will need. Partly because you can't provide quite the diversity and the variety of feeding sources that way. To some extent, you can mix up the seeds and all that, but so I'm not against using those kind of things. In some ways, it's an economic decision. You can because there's an endless appetite on the part of some of our more urban birds. Or like our white-winged doves, for example, that weren't even here 30 years ago, but now they're outnumbering everything else. They particularly like bird feeders, and so you'll get large numbers of those, as well as your house sparrows and maybe some of your starlings and things like that. And I don't hate on them necessarily, but that's not the main target, right, of having a bird feeder, is to have all of those. And then you have some associated things that come along with big crowds of doves and other things as well. So yeah, there can be pluses and minuses. Hummingbird feeders, it can really help them. It does give them some energy. Definitely have some sugars they're getting. There's debate about whether there's not a lot more nutrition they might get from the nectar sources. I'm sure there's more in some ways, at least. I'm not a student of those things. But so supplementally speaking, I think there's some value on migration. Sometimes they need a lot that's easily accessible, and so it makes a lot of sense. That's why you'll see clouds of hummingbirds around feeders, when it comes to be May or when it comes to be September, August, September, because they're coming through and they need that. And so that makes some sense. But it's better not for them to be your primary way of feeding. Now, this is in our yard at Cardinal with a suet cake, and I've seen some back there on the table there. Certain species of birds really go for the suet cakes, and that's a great combination of the fat and the seeds. These are usually embedded in there, and I know at Ollie's you can get, less than $2 a piece. They're really pretty cheap. We don't use them a whole lot. We'll put them out there occasionally, but they're popular and a pretty wide variety of birds. They're known for attracting woodpeckers, and so if you're not seeing woodpeckers, then suet cake is one good way to go after the woodpeckers and have them in your yard a bit more. But I was impressed with how much the cardinals like the seeds there and frequented that. So plants that host insects and produce fruit, seeds, and nectar should be the primary bird and pollinator feeding structures in our yards. And the variety is so amazing that it's nearly endless what you can do there. One of my go-tos, really the foundation for my seed providing services for birds, is common sunflower. Helianthus annuum. It's hard to beat it. I've never planted a sunflower in our yard. You don't have to, because they're just all around. And if there's ever one sunflower, even in your neighbor's yard, you've got sunflowers after that, and you may be calling down curses because you don't want to have those sunflowers. Well, they're annuals, and when they're still young, they're very, very soft tissue things. And so it's not a lot of work, if you are doing something like go down the one you don't want, it's not a big deal. Yes?
Well, are you done about it? I just had a question whenever you're
Okay.
done.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I have this rock area where I just let sunflowers grow as much as they want because I love seeing them. It's like a natural fence too for that area. But they are dead currently. They've done their time, and the birds have eaten everything that I feel. Should I cut them back? They're very not pretty now, but I thought we should leave them right for the winter.
Well, there's three things I would say probably about that, and I've been really loving on sunflower plants in all the stages of life for the last several years, but you can tell that this is not a living sunflower plant, right? Okay. So one thing about sunflowers is they make a lot of seeds. And that disc flower, man, they make a lot of seeds. And some of them do get eaten while the sunflower's still alive, definitely. Although I've noticed that the birds will not start visiting the sunflowers to get those seeds until they have quite a few more mature, drying seeds. or heads there. What I've noticed is come January, come February, when it's really, really hard to find seeds for a lot of the birds, they're still visiting these. There may not be as many left, but they're looking for them, and they manage to still find some things in there, because sunflowers, one thing they're good at is making a lot of flowers, and each one makes a lot of seeds. And so even across through the winter, there are some residual seeds in there that are helping, and that's the time the birds need the food the most, is in the winter. And so you'll get, if you have some of these, and they do look a little ugly to humans, they don't look ugly to the birds. And so you get a lot of the finches and the winter sparrows, like the juncos and your chipping sparrows and different ones, even some buntings, definitely goldfinches, lots of them. In the wintertime, I leave those up there and I get all those species and more coming to them. So that becomes one of my primary ways of not going to Walmart and buying seeds that attract the white-winged doves, because I've never yet seen a white-winged dove come and try to eat those seeds, not even one time. And so this targets the kind of birds that you really want to come in. Another thing I would say is that birds really value places to perch that are not right on the ground, or that are not too high up like the top of a tree. They need that intermediate space. That's really critically important for them to scan for predators or to know what's going on. They don't want to just land on the ground and start eating. They want to perch, and we'll talk about this with bird bass too. They want to perch and survey any cats, any what, and then they'll come down and do whatever they want to do. But they need that. And so these are great because they're just in that range where the birds need a place to land. Right? And the other thing is that what you can do maybe toward the end of the winter time, when that need for the food is not so much, is maybe cut them off at about 15 inches or something like that. Because some of the plants that have some pith inside their stems are great for native bees, and I'm sure the next presenter today will talk more about that. But they often will use pithy stems to nest in. And so if you'll cut those off, if it's not a place you have to walk a lot or whatever, like some of them on the margins, leave some of those stems up, cut off at about 12 to 24 inches, and then you'll have native bees, so bees know. So there's a lot of good that comes from those sunflowers. All right, so black-chinned hummingbird is on autumn sage. This was pictures from a few days ago. Autumn sage is one of the best of the best that you can have. They typically will have salmon-colored leaves, like bright pink, but they have different, some are purple, some are white like this one, but the hummingbirds love all of them. And large butterflies. You see, these are huge flowers, and so smaller butterflies like the skippers can't access. They just don't have long enough proboscis to get down in there, but the big butterflies, like still have in our yard every day, a large orange sulfur butterfly, which I've never seen that one before. And I've got some great pictures of it, and it is visiting these guys, and it's visiting our hummingbird bush, our Anisacanthus. And because it's a big butterfly, and it can reach way down in there like the hummingbirds can and get the nectar out there. So I really can't recommend these salvias, these autumn sages enough. All right, so some different food sources here. I mentioned the Chinese pistache. Again, there's reasons I don't prefer it as a tree in our yard, but those berries do get eaten by our local birds. Heath aster is a common prairie plant here that's great for pollinators, especially Carolina snail seed. I've been told it's of no use to humans to eat. It's also, it can be a curse. I don't know if you've ever tried to get rid of that. When it's kind of taking over a bed, but it's really hard. Their root systems don't end. They might go to China, I don't know. But it's quite beautiful in the winter when it has these red berries, and birds do subsist on those seeds and all that. So I let it live on our fence, and I sometimes try to pull some of it out of my flower beds, but it's a losing game. And it's not an ugly plant. I find it's not too bad. It's just the females that do that. The males just are a nuisance. They don't make any pretty red berries. So, anyway, and then you've got the golden crown beard, sometimes called Cowpin daisies. Another champion out of mine. Of course, they also self-seed and they grow everywhere once you have a few of them. But this, they bloom, a long blooming season, and many, many, many kinds of pollinators come in. And when you have them, you're going to have also a lot more birds coming as well. Not so much hummingbirds, they need these huge flowers, and this has got a disc flower, but really I go for variety. You don't want to have just huge flowers or just disc flowers in your yard. You want to have as many different configurations as possible to apply and meet the needs of all the different creatures that need that type of flower. So really diversity is the rule of thumb to go by, even if you don't have massive amounts of every species that you're talking about. Another one that people love to hate is goosefoot or lance quarters. Technically not a native, although we do have native species of Chenopodium, but this one is very successful as a Eurasian kind of a species, but pretty much naturalized here. You can see the kind of knobbly looking, those are the seeds forming, which form in the fall. This is another one that will feed birds all the way through February, March. the plants will be dry, but the juncos come in. One of the prettiest sights to me is, we don't get snow very often here, right? But if there is some snow on the ground in the yard, the juncos are going to be always. The juncos are in the goose foot because they make little tiny little black seeds, millions of them, I'm convinced, per plant. And so when you get that layer of snow, and then you have the juncos shaking the branches, so you eat those, they'll get in there and move around, and then those little tiny black seeds will land on the white snow. It's so pretty when you get that little black speckle, and they'll get down there and they'll just go to town eating those. And I'm thinking, wow, I could not engineer a feeding system that would actually do for those guys what this plant is doing for them. So again, this is an annual plant. They will grow everywhere once you have them in your yard, but you can just mow them down. You don't have to worry about them. You're going to always have them there. So it can be a nuisance, but it's doing great things for your birds there. So common sunflower, again, they kind of get riotous and all that, but they do a lot of good. And this is a female house finch that is checking that out. It's a very high production bird feeder and low input, very low labor there. The most labor is when you eventually do need to figure them out, right? Because they're kind of stickery and they're not spiny, but they're just rough. All right, so here's a couple more tube flowers that are really high value in our yard as far as hummingbirds and large butterflies and even bumblebees as well. Bumblebees like those deep tube flowers as well. So you're familiar with desert willow? The different cultivars, some of them have darker purple flowers, but that's a native plant that has really high value. And you got the American trumpet vine over here. Most of them actually are kind of a deep orange red, but there is this cultivar that's kind of a yellow that's there. We just found one of those and transplanted it, and hummingbirds visit that. I was doing a count. I think we've got at least 9 different kinds of shrubs or perennials that hummingbirds regularly may have 10 in our yard right now. And that wasn't necessarily totally by design. We just wanted those plants, but it's amazing how many of them are well suited to the hummingbirds and the other pollinators. Okay, so bird baths. I recently got one of these very inexpensive little solar floating water agitators, I guess you can call it. It's got several different settings you can put on it. Some make a little more of an arch, and some of them just kind of stir the water around. Basically, your water stays in better condition if it's moving a little bit, and you get less algae formation and stuff like that. And another value is that if there's movement of the water, it catches the attention of birds. Birds that are passing by or whatever. If they see the light playing on the water, they will know there's water there, and so you get that arrangement. Now, sometimes the movement of water is a little bit disconcerting to birds because they're wary. Everything likes to eat birds out there. All the predators like to eat them, and certainly our feral cats are big on that. So they're going to be careful. That's why you need to have some perches around. So anyway, we do have some white-winged doves that come in, but they're not overwhelming numbers. They just come in, get their drink, and go on. But most of my good bird pictures in our yard are on that bird bath. We do have lots of those. So this one just kind of shows you where there are perches that the birds will almost never fly straight to the bird bath from a distance away. They'll almost go. I have a dead peach tree here at night in the Snowmageddon or something like that, and I have let it stay there, not because I like this ugly, great dead thing, but because I know that it's really important to have a structure there, and I don't want to spend money on putting a structure when I already got nature's provision, right? So I've got this right over here, and that is most birds' favorite place to stop and stage and look around, come down to the bird bath. There's a volunteer hackberry. I'm really happy with that volunteer hackberry. I didn't have to do any work to put it there and all that, and so I am going to print it and shape it and all that so it doesn't get too shady and all, but I'm going to let it grow because it's going to be something that's going to be helpful to birds coming to my bird bath. So they'll also perch there some. This Vitex, I keep the under part of it clean as much as possible. I need to trim that again. But many birds will land right about in here, and then they'll look around and come to the bird bath. And even the power line up there, you'd be amazed how many birds will stop there. Hummingbirds, doves, finches, whatever, and then they'll come down to the bird bath. So make sure, if you're doing a bird bath, that you don't make one of 2 mistakes. You could even make the mistake of having nothing at all around it because it's all totally plain, no perch nearby. That's a little intimidating to the birds. That's a big open area. They don't feel like they can get close enough to inspect, sort of scope it out. Or you could have too much deep cover right around there that a cat could hide in, or some other kind of predator there, and so they will be suspicious of that kind of thing. So both things you got to keep in balance. I do have quite a bit of growth going on here, but as you get closer to the bird bath, I've tried to make sure that it's not completely covering and providing. You can see through it. Nothing can hide very well there. This here is far enough away that it's not going to be that big an issue. Plus, a lot of these are plants that the birds like anyway. Then our desert willows are right here, of course. All right. So a few of the birds we've documented in our yard. I'll run through these fairly quickly so that we have a little bit of time for some Q&A. Let's pause for a second though. Does someone else have a question about these specific things?
Is your bird bath, your little thing that makes the water go, is that solar?
Yes. Yeah, it has a black disc, and it's really amazing. Even just with ambient light, without direct sunlight, it'll make a little bit of movement. It's pretty awesome, yeah. When there's direct sun, it's like, pretty amazing. And it's really not expensive. We haven't had it that long, so I don't know if it's going to break, in a year or something, but we'll see. You do have to kind of keep it clean. Where it intakes, if there is any little particulates and things in the water, it'll kind of clog a little. So I just, every day when I come out there to do a little watering, I'll just spray the underside of that and get the little fins cleared out.
I have trouble keeping mine clean. I have 3,
Yeah.
and they're all cement.
Yeah.
So finally, I'm worried about the solution I put in there. Obviously, scrubbing the edges does not lift the mold out.
Right.
So I found that just plain white vinegar, and I have to empty the bird bath. I just spray it till the water.
Right.
Dump a whole gallon in it and let it sit overnight. So I cover it with a tarp, so they can't get water. I try not to do them all the same day.
Right.
And it's amazing how clean the bird bath can.
Are you using pure vinegar or a solution?
Usually 24 hours. I use it straight.
Okay, straight vinegar.
I don't dilute it.
Okay, just let it sit for
I just
24
put a
hours.
whole gallon in there.
Yeah.
And I'll add more. Vinegar is pretty cheap.
Right.
Uh,
So those who
So
might
I
not have
found
heard.
that better than like using ammonia, which also
Yeah.
cleans it, then I worry,
Yeah,
what are my plants gonna think when this comes over the top?
Okay, so the idea of vinegar is kind of a cleaning
It
solution.
seems to be the most.
It's gentle
innocuous.
enough, right? It's
Yeah,
not-
it's innocuous for
Right.
the critters.
That's a
But
great
then
idea.
I leave the cover on until I'm sure
Yeah.
that the inside is clean. Sometimes it's worse than others.
Great idea. Question?
So the bees have taken over my bird bath. Will the birds still come to that? I mean, they swarm that bird bath all the time.
I mean, it's hard to say for sure. I mean, there could be such a large number that it might be off-putting to them, but I know that we always have, at any given time, there are at least 4 or 5, different species of wasps getting water from there and bees around them. So I haven't noticed that slowing the birds down. So I'm guessing that they are kind of used to each other and all that. The fact, mostly, I mean, and you can ask this question maybe next session, but bees tend not to sting just readily at any particular time, and wasps are the same way. There's got to be some perceived threat for sure, usually. And I think around a bird bath where they're all going for something they need, they don't really seem to pay attention. In fact, I've heard it said you almost never get a bee sting if the bee's collecting pollen, because they are focused on that task. And you can go and you can shoot a bee or whatever like that, and you're not threatening it because you're not near its hive, and it just kind of moves around. So I think that it's really helpful to be aware of what triggers that kind of thing. But I think some of the birds are probably aware that they're not in danger.
I haven't seen them as much.
Yeah.
That's why I wondered if that was a.
One thing I've done is I've kind of made a bird bath just for my bees. Just put like a whole bunch of rocks in there where it's not as inviting to the birds, but it's more inviting to the bees. And kind of did the same thing with my hummingbird feeders. I had one that actually kind of leaked a little, and I was like, oh, well, I just need to get rid of this one. And then I realized it was attracting more of the bees and wasps, and so it kept them off of the other hummingbird feeders, so I just kind of left it.
If you have something that has a very, very shallow layer, that really is preferred by the insect bringers usually. The other day I was somewhere, it was really hot, and I had sprayed my windshield just to kind of get some of the dust off and all that. Almost immediately, a yellow-legged dauber came and landed on my windshield. I thought, what in the world? It kept just staying there, and I finally realized, it was after the little tiny drops of water that were left. It evidently hadn't found water recently, and it was just going for it. So I think that, the shallow placement there, and the birds are going to want a little bit more substantial. So really good ideas there. So let's see if we can get through. I know we need to kind of maintain our look on our attention to time. We probably were in our house for 12 years before I ever saw a towhee even near our yard. And every year, the last 3 or 4 years, we have them all the time. In fact, they come all the way close to the house, and they get under that's the autumn sage, and they scratch around and do all kinds of things. And that's just an example of what some years of kind of planning and making sure you have some different things like they need some cover at almost the ground level. That's where they scratch around. They look like little chickens in there. I mean, I'm prejudiced. In my opinion, this is about the prettiest sparrow that we get during the year. It's so amazing. So I feel like, oh man, whatever work I put into this yard, to have these guys every year now is awesome. We have Lincoln sparrows every time. I never saw those, until about 3 years ago. And finally, we started getting enough of what they needed around there. And such a beautiful little sparrow, little winter sparrow there. It's just awesome birds there. And the juncos, of course. Who doesn't love a junco? So dapper like that, and that's right there next to our sunflowers. So, black-chinned hummingbird, they're pretty much resident with us all the way through the summer because we have, like I said, 9 or 10 different plants that are flowering. Most of them flower about the same time, where there's at least 7 of them going, and so we always have 3 guys. I don't see them on Vitex that often, but look at it, he's on actually a Vitex, so pretty amazing. Yellow-breasted chat, I've only seen one of these in our yard before. I've seen one just outside our yard before, but this last year one came through on migration just like for 3 or 4 days after it called and got a chance to look at it. Boy, it's such a beautiful bird. And Mississippi kites, I mean, they're around all the time. I put this picture in not because it's a great picture of the whole kite, but a lot of people don't realize there's some rufous in the primary flight feathers of a Mississippi kite. And I was fortunate enough to find one of a feather on the ground the other day, and it had that little dusting of rufous on it. I thought, man, that is so pretty. So yeah, pretty awesome. When you see them enough and look at them enough, you see details that you would miss otherwise. Song sparrow. This past winter was the first time I've seen song sparrows in our yard. I mean, they're out at Cedar Creek, but this is, for several weeks we had song sparrows in the yard. It's awesome. Very crested flycatcher. I don't know that they've nested in our yard, but they're all around all the time these days. So none of those are great pictures, but it's a wonderful bird. And again, you can go down to Cedar Creek and you can see all these birds, but it's so cool to get them in your yard too. The yellow warbler, they're always just kind of passing through. So just the other day, this was from last year, and that's purple hyacinth vine. I know it's not a native, but it's kind of a wonderful plant in a lot of ways. So. American robin, that one's cooling off in the summer heat. Just going after the bat there. Field sparrow. This last winter was the first time I saw a field sparrow in our yard. They're common out in the countryside, but so cool to see one with a little pink bill, yellow orange bill, rufusy colors on there. And a house finch is kind of a dark picture, but it's a very healthy looking male. And he's sitting on, yes, a goosefoot, lamb quarters. And just in the wintertime, you get lots and lots of food there. Blue jays, of course, they're a dime a dozen. They're always pretty, and good to see them coming. But bird bath, western kingbird, terrible pictures in a way. I kind of like this one though because it shows you the blind outer tail feathers, which is diagnostic for that type. I think you can get rarely a Couch's or a Cass's kingbird around here, but and these are going to eat whatever kind of insects are in there. They're going to go eat all the predatory ones as well. But you can see nesting material in that one's beak. And now, the sharp-shinned hawk is going to be mainly attracted by the birds, not by the insects and things like that, but it's cool to see them once in a while. And I really, in recent years, have not seen near as many. I think there's a real fall-off in numbers of our raptors, just by my subjective experience. I used to see 3 times as many sharp-shinned hawks like 10 years ago at Abilene as I do now. Even Cooper's hawks, which I see more often, I saw 3 times as many 10 years ago. I think sadly, they're decreasing, but that was really cool to have one flying close enough where I could get a picture. Black-crested titmouse, pretty familiar in the woodland, but they are wary about coming into yards. They like to stay back in the trees, but regularly have them at the bird bath. Now that we have other habitat around, they like it a lot. So, and another painted dove there, so beautiful. Painted buntings are regulars in our yard. Never saw one in our yard until 3 or 4 years ago. And we don't get as many as the males. Now, there's some movement at really the Cedar Creek corridor is where a lot of the breeding goes on, and then by the end of June they start getting ready to migrate, and the males, interestingly, go down across into Mexico during July, and you just quit seeing them, and you see the females and the immatures. They're still in our yard even this week around there, and just joining with the house finches, eating the same diet basically. So again, whatever attracts the house finches is going to bring in some buntings. I think one time we might have had what's the blue bunting? You indigo. I think we had a female indigo one time in our yard, so that's kind of cool. Okay, we're wrapping up here. I want to say just a little bit here about, in the world of permaculture, we talk about transition ethic, and that's basically a way of saying, hey, you might need to kind of control your natural native perfectionism when it comes to doing all these things. It's a journey. It's taken us like 15 years to get our yard to where we have this many different kinds of native birds coming in. And so it's not going to happen all at once. So there's wisdom of acknowledging limitations. Sometimes it's financial. Sometimes it's your yard has further to go to get to the place you want it to be. Even as we're trying to work toward change. There's benefits of gradual, incremental changes. But be encouraged every little bit. We're trying to kind of reduce our amount of regular, ordinary yard and get more native ground covers and things, but it's a lot of work to do it all in a week. You can't do that. So just mark yourself out a few square feet and work on that. Take some pictures, keep your journal, and so you know you're making progress, and be encouraged. Maximize opportunities for learning and reflection. Some people keep a journal as kind of a succession of their yard through the year, and they say, oh, this one started blooming on this day. That's a great habit to do. It kind of helps you enjoy, I think, even more what's going on as you make your yard a more welcoming place. So a few useful resources. This is the same link about the ecoregion's keystone species that are really good to help you with some plant selection strategically going forward. And then our own Marianne Maroon, some of y'all may know her, is always great at collecting things. Has been doing it for, I think she's been doing it for about 700 years now, or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, she knows a lot of stuff, so those are some good lists that she's put together as well. And I think that is about it. So we're at time, but maybe we can try and address a little bit since we started late.
Just a quick question. I don't recall you covering this. Root boxes, nesting boxes. Is that something you go to, or is that work from Pepper?
I don't have a lot of my own experience with that, but I have a lot of friends who've done a lot with bird boxes, and so it's a really mixed outcome for a lot of them. Many people put in the bird boxes because they want to have the titmouse come in there, or flycatchers or whatever. And so what you tend to have is house sparrows and other things like that. And I don't know for sure. I mean, you can fiddle with the aperture size, getting in and the configuration, and maybe make it more appealing. But it's really tricky to attract exactly what you want, and you tend to end up getting a lot of those city birds. So I would discourage someone. I mean, I helped someone put up an owl box a couple of years ago. I don't know if they've been successful, but hey, try it. If you don't try, you won't. So I say it's worth experimenting, but don't be discouraged if you get just maybe other things.
What you said that you skipped over, and birds like it, that's the grasshopper.
Yes.
I'm living out in the country, and it's very frustrating.
Lots of grasshoppers.
And too many.
Yeah.
They are killing all of the other plants.
Yeah. Even in my vegetable garden, sometimes I'll there'll be a whole section of a tomato plant that's just eaten down. Even the tomatoes, sometimes the grasshopper will eat the tomatoes. Right. Yeah. I've experienced that.
You said mosquito spray.
Yes, just recently.
The whole neighborhood.
Yeah, I have some concerns about that. I don't know. I mean, I understand the reason for it, and I agree with the rationale. My misgivings come about because that's kind of like a blanket. I wonder how many things besides mosquitoes die in that. So yeah, that's a big concern I have, and it's one of those things where it's hard to know what to do.
They're just dying. Mosquito spray is very, very bad on honeybees.
Yeah.
Probably hear more.
Yeah. The vast majority of insects are beneficial and some even essential, but then, because of the risk to health and all that, we sometimes will feel the need to do something, that kind of a measure. And yeah, I think people are often not aware of the collateral. I don't know if that means the decision has to be changed, or maybe we need to work our way toward more targeted things. I don't know, but yeah, that's a concern I have. Any other questions or thoughts?
Instead of planting crepe myrtles, which kind of really quick and shade, it's got no shade, what would you recommend?
I would probably look at a list of native plants and look at something that would be similar in terms of size. Right now I have I have seedlings. I started from seed instead of golden bowl lead trees, which is a legume. It's a small native plant that's very drought resistant that makes a really pretty puffy, like most of the puffy yellow flowers. It's great for pollinators. It doesn't usually get more than about 15 or 20 feet tall, and so it's in the similar class range. So I would suggest going with something like that. It has some beauty and even some color, but it's a native plant and will absolutely, it even bless your soil because you've got the legume, great nitrogen in there. So I would suggest that as a possibility.
Garden world.
Okay, yeah, so and maybe look at some of the local nurseries. It's a golden ball lead tree. Texas native plant, and it grows in really dry areas. It's amazing. Yes, it has vines.
Does that make other trees?
Yes.
Like,
Well, I don't, it's not, it doesn't seem to be as aggressive as that. I mean, places where I've seen them growing, I have not seen big, large numbers of them. You know, there's some that come up, but not like these. And they have no thorns or anything. So, yeah, it's a very nice tree that doesn't hurt you. Yes?
Would you comment on tropical milkweed?
So, you know, it's not going to see it as a native plant, but it does offer some good services, I think. So I wouldn't have a problem with having some in the yard. I wouldn't make it maybe a dominant plant, but I wouldn't mind including it. I know there's a lot of controversy about it, but I think there's some benefits to it for sure. 'Cause, I mean, a lot of different pollinator species will come and be benefit from that besides even monarchs. Any questions? I know we need to observe our time limits.
I have one.
Okay.
Nandina berries. I hear, yay, they're great for birds, and I hear, no, they're not.
Yeah.
They're pretty in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah. From what I've read, and I haven't read all the literature, right? Because I'm just going to give you from what I've read. It seems that those beautiful red berries are indeed toxic to birds. And the problem I see is that there are native red berries like yopon, holly, and others that those birds depend on. So I don't know that they can easily tell the difference. And so I really do have a concern that Nandina is hurting bird populations. And so I realize it's pervasive, and once you have it in your yard, it tends to just grow as well. But I tend to advise people if they're asking for my advice, I advise them to switch it up for something else if they can. I mean, I'm not going to go and do it myself, but you know.
Well, you can cut the berries.
Yes, you can do that.
As they develop, but
Yeah.
they're really pretty with
Right.
snow.
They are pretty. Yeah.
So yopon berries are okay?
Yopon is a native plant, and yopon berries are a very important source of food for winter birds, yes.
Okay.
And, I mean, yopon is one of the very few plants in the world that naturally has caffeine. Native Americans use it to make tea, and when the settlers and explorers would come through and didn't have their access to coffee from Europe or whatever, a lot of them got hooked on caffeine from drinking yopon tea. And it was just an important thing for the indigenous peoples, yes. So it's a really, really great plant in a lot of ways, yeah.
I've planted 6 products used to yopon, and I've done it 3 times. And I'm finally figuring out if that yopon, the product usually does not have afternoon shade. It is really hard to keep alive. And you can see my fence row, and you can see a line that has shade right beside dead,
Yeah.
no shade. And so
Yeah.
we'd be very careful about,
How much?
they won't tell you either.
Right. So good advice from someone who's tried there. So be careful about too much direct sun for yopons there.
Well, you know, it's Pride Houston yopons.
Oh, Pride of Houston.
Yes, Pride Houston, that's all I can find.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with the different
Well,
cultivars.
it's a newer cultivar, but the old yopon, you can find at the same nurseries, but I couldn't find them here in Illinois.
Yeah, I tend, because I'm cheap, I tend to get most of my yard plants, including most of the natives. I mean, occasionally I'll get some from an actual nursery, but I'm an inveterate seed collector. If I see like these golden ball nurseries, I just happen to find one. I had no idea they were even here, and so I've harvested seeds, and they germinate pretty well. So I've been really excited. I'm getting ready to find places to put them permanently. All right, thank you everyone very much. And I'm sure that let me hand it over to